While having only posted 32 videos at the time of recording this, Ethereal Snake is a huge channel in the ideas that it presents. From the depths of human suffering to just good world building, Ethereal Snake, or Tom Bourgeois, knows how to deeply contact feelings of loss in ways so accurate that they stick with you long after you watch whichever of these videos first crossed your timeline. At first, the severity of these topics might not be clear, but as we go further into the grim stories that this channel has created, you'll see what I mean. Before we get started, I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, my Discord server. It's got like 10 members right now, but it's a pretty fun place, and we post fucked up memes, and you should join because I added a channel for video ideas, and instead of commenting about stuff I should cover, you can just leave it there now. Join the Mechanical Dinner Party Discord server through the link on my channel or through my link tree, and back to the video. To talk about Ethereal Snake is to talk about one central series that has been the backbone of the channel since its inception. In fact, this series began on November 12th, 2018 with the very first video Ethereal Snake ever posted. Mickey was here. Now, none of this makes sense yet, but it will. As with a lot of Ethereal's content, there is an original version, which is what we're seeing, and there is often a perfected or at least revised version, which we will see later. As with everything I talk about on this channel, I recommend you go and watch the original stuff first and then come back, because there may be things that you notice that I or the sources I'm drawing from for this video may not have seen. Also, go and check out the soundtrack of this series on Spotify. All of it was created by Ethereal specifically for this project, and you'll see as we go along that it really is fantastic. That said, we are now going to go over the central story of the Ethereal Snake channel. Afterwards, we'll talk about some of the other stuff he's made, but for now, let's go into the story of Mickey, Goofy, and Donald and their nightmare that began in Vietnam.
The godforsaken Viet Cong are winning. Their fortresses are trees and holes, and they're coming at us with spears and traps, and they're winning. But not for long. We found their headquarters, deep in the heart of Cambodia, and our informant tells us that there's information there that will win us the war. In and out, a mission we've done 1,000 times.
We're here. See you on the other side, boys. May God be with you.
So they've got to get some nondescript intel from a Viet Cong headquarters that could change the tide of the war. Goofy and Mickey parachute from a helicopter flown by Donald into the jungle near the base. They don't have too much difficulty getting what they need, but Goofy finds something. Something that will change their lives forever. After escaping to the extraction point and calling it an airstrike, Goofy decides to tell Mickey about what he found.
Did you get the documents, Goofy?
I did. But there was something else.
What are you talking about?
It's
what?
a dossier.
It's a dossier detailing awful truths about America's involvement in the Vietnam War. Truths so serious that they could change the tide of public opinion permanently. Goofy's solution is to leak the documents to the press so they can go home. But Mickey has other ideas. He doesn't want the war to end, telling Goofy that the war is all he has and there's nothing left for him back home. And when Goofy won't hand over the documents, even at gunpoint, Mickey decides it's worth killing for. Preparing for his own demise, Goofy closes his eyes, remembering the fishing spot they went to when they were kids. And then reality sets in, and Mickey gives away any hope of a happy life. This flashback is important because in Mickey's choice to kill the fish, he's not doing it out of violence. He thinks he's being merciful. In this way, Goofy is not unlike the fish to him, something that has lost its way, that needs to be put down for reasons it can't comprehend. The problem is that in both cases, there is a solution without violence that Mickey cannot see. The fish could have just been put back in the water, and he could have let Goofy keep the file, maybe even telling superiors about it later, but that's not what Mickey does. He decides to pull the trigger, leaving Max without a father, Goofy's wife without a husband, and he and Donald without a best friend. Once he was back home, Mickey struggled with what he had done, returning to Goofy's grave even though he knew it would make the pain worse, just reminding him of the funeral, as he mourned alongside the family of a man he murdered. He tried to get his life together though, and decided to put his martial and logistical knowledge to use by starting a private detective agency with Donald. From what it looks like, things quieted down for a while, and time passed, allowing maybe a fraction of the pain to fade. But there was a problem. Remember that dossier, the one Mickey killed Goofy in order to destroy? Yeah, well, he never destroyed it. For some reason, Mickey just kept it, all these years, in a safe. I think there's two primary reasons for this. Either he just couldn't bring himself to do it in the wake of Goofy's death because keeping the document around was almost like holding on to a piece of his dead friend, or it's a representation of Mickey's guilt, something he pushed as far into the back of his mind as possible but could never quite be rid of. In any case, he's rid of it now because someone broke into his office and stole it, leaving behind an envelope. Whoever broke in knows what happened in Vietnam. They also know about the old fishing spot we saw earlier, but they use a fly to tell Mickey to go there, and he mentions that that's the kind they used to use, but the only other time we've seen the fishing spot, they weren't fly fishing. I don't know, that was just weird. At the fishing spot, Mickey finds a VHS tape that shows us they got Donald and are showing him the coroner's report of Goofy's death. Donald is unaffected by this though, saying that he has already read it thousands of times. The tape ends by warning Mickey that Donald will die if he doesn't get to the next location. The hint this time is a red leaf, which leads us to the only other place we've seen leaves like this, the cemetery. In this tape, the kidnapper shows Donald a bullet, the same bullet that killed Goofy. At first, Donald is unaffected by this as well, but the kidnapper reveals that the bullet was manufactured in America and used exclusively by the US Army. The clue accompanying this tape is a crucifix. The crucifix leads Mickey to a church where him, Donald, and Goofy used to hang out before they got drafted.
How does God account for abandoned churches? Do people just stop believing, stop caring, and move on? Or does he see them as no longer fit for purpose? All I know is that God isn't here anymore.
I think that line is multifaceted, because Mickey isn't just talking about the church. He's talking about himself. Someone no longer fit for purpose. The final tape shows that Donald has been untied and is being presented with one last piece of evidence.
What is it? It's what your team recovered in Cambodia. You don't recognize it? I want you to read it.
When he reads the document, the weight and horror of the war, its consequences, and his role in them hit all at once. Hearing that Mickey had the dossier the whole time, he realizes what happened and what became of Goofy. He doesn't understand why Mickey would do this to them, would do this to everyone, but the kidnapper offers a way out, a way for Donald to make up for his part in the suffering, and hands him a gun. Overcome with regret and revelation, Donald takes his own life, and the tape ends.
Forgive me.
Now the kidnapper is finally here, ready to face Mickey, only it's not a stranger. At first, Mickey thinks it's Goofy, through some miracle still alive, but it's not. It's Max, Goofy's son, looking so much like his father that they're almost identical. He has come with an ultimatum, to try and find some sort of closure. Mickey can turn his gun on himself and pay back the deaths of Goofy and Donald, or he can kill Max and finish what he started. But he hesitates, and in this moment of hesitation, has a flashback. Mickey is hallucinating Goofy standing before him in his apartment, eyes distant and judging. Around the edges of the audio, you can hear indistinct and muffled whispering, which is very common for people experiencing auditory and often visual hallucinations. He pleads with his friend to leave him alone, to let it end, but he won't depart. In the pleading, though, he says a word that triggers something, and a flood of hidden memories pour forth.
To atone? To make it all right? How the could I possibly make up for the things I've done? There's nothing I can do.
What is America?
Life.
What is Jim now?
Death.
Sometime after returning from the war, Mickey was subjected to some sort of MK-Ultra-like force that warped his perception of Vietnam and America. We learn that Goofy's name is actually Gabriel Gibson, and most importantly, we realize that these have never been cartoon characters at all. They're people, actual people, that are seen through the lens of childhood innocence that was forced on Mickey. In this mental break, he finally sees clearly again, for the first time in what we can assume is years. Even knowing this, he decides to end his misery. But Donald barges in to save him before he does.
Right. I'm coming in.
With this knowledge, he refuses to strike down the only son of a dead friend. Dropping the gun, the same gun that killed Goofy, the echo of violence that he's carried with him all these years on the floor of the church, so that it too may be forgotten by God. Coward. There's a few different perspectives on the ending that I have seen the audience of the Mickey story produce. Some people think the entirety of Donald's kidnapping was a delusion by Mickey, his grief manifesting a situation in which he could be held accountable. In this scenario, all of it happened in his head, in the apartment, and Donald, who is still very much alive, helps him get on the path to recovery. A second theory centers around that video I showed you in the beginning, with the idea that the taxicab Mickey enters at the end of the story and the one he's riding in here are one and the same, meaning that he went back home and, without Donald to stop him this time, took his own life. I don't think either of these is accurate though. When Donald comes into the apartment to save him, he has had his first breakthrough from whatever mental prison the government put him in and was able to start seeing people as people rather than characters, something that continues in the final scene, meaning the beginning of his mental stability had already happened. That increased level of mental clarity makes the taxi theory a little less likely, and even if it didn't, he has his revolver in that old video, and we just saw him leave it at the church. I think more than likely it's exactly what it says on the can. Mickey had a mental breakthrough and overcame his violent nature, refusing to continue the spread of pain and loss. An interesting trait of Mickey's that becomes more apparent as the story progresses is his deep-seated religious beliefs, assumedly starting sometime after being drafted. His views of God oscillate though. Sometimes he sees a redeemer, sometimes a judge, and sometimes a bitter old man. But other times, all he sees is his friend. So that's the Mickey series, and I hope you understand why I wanted to talk about it at such lengths. It's a huge part of Ethereal Snake's work, and also just a really incredible story. I mentioned the great music earlier, but it's also worth mentioning the voice acting, especially Meat Canyon, Matthew Gafford, The Minute Hour, and Stephen Lynch really being the final touches that brought all the pieces together. So now let's talk about some of the other major videos on the channel, all of which are way lighter than what we've just seen. We're going to keep the theme of religion going though and talk about the betrayal of Jesus.
This is my body. Take and
Oh my God! Peter!
He's dead. He's dead, Judas. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Can't you bring him back? Isn't that something you can do?
They shot his head, man! That's not leprosy! Let's go!
Oh my God!
Hell!
Everything's over. It's all fucked. I invited them to that dinner, Judas. It was supposed to be me. What the fuck happened?
I don't know, but maybe...
The FBI is closing in on Jesus, and Judas is their informant. This weird blending of old and new technology in this whole series is oddly enjoyable and reminds me a lot of something like Monty Python's Life of Brian. It doesn't work though. Jesus realizes what's going on, beats the absolute fuck out of Judas, and then runs away across whatever body of water that is. At the time of writing this, there's a second part to the Jesus story, but it's part 2, part 1, so we can expect more before long. This one is a bit more high quality, but the same idea, with FBI agents raiding Jesus' tomb hideout and finding his multiplied frozen fish sticks, incredibly accurate Mexican ID, and home gym.
5, 6, 7. One more rep. 8.
We also get a recording of Jesus throwing up some iron, but I think it would have been really funny if he had only done 6 reps and rested on the 7th. But I can't take credit for that, it was Miss Sandwich the Brave. Eventually, Jesus shows up and clobbers everyone there, much to the horror of these guys who sent the FBI after him in the first place.
Begin Operation Cleanse the Temple.
But the weapon, it's not ready. We need his DNA.
And he's bringing it right to us.
I just really love that this is the guy who's at the top of getting rid of Jesus. You recognize this guy at all? Maybe just a little? In any case, the next part of this series is going to be insane. So that's some of the oldest and some of the newest content on this channel. A lot of the work in between focuses on using established characters in twisted ways, but some of them, like this video called Space Encounter, are completely original. On average though, this fully original content gets less traction than the stuff that pulls from things that already exist. And that's for obvious reason. People enjoy interesting takes on things they already know. But I hope this stuff will get recognition too, because it is just as well made as the rest of it. Finishing off the newer and original content, let's look at Post-Nuclear Driving Test. It's set in an apocalyptic wasteland where the DMV is at war with the Flesh Riders. Basically, these guys don't like these guys driving cars. And while the DMV is slightly cooler than it is now, it is still the worst place in the world.
Hey, Mark!
That's driving instructor Mark. He's on sick leave.
Okay, let's go. Let's just go. Drive.
This guy is taking his driving test when they are attacked by a Flesh Rider, and apparently that means they have to road joust. The car gets destroyed and the driving instructor ends up like the first guy we saw, but before he dies, he has to tell the driving student something. He was sent to the world of tomorrow, which is just present day, and he saw the glory of the modern highway system. When he found a DMV, they showed him all of time in a single moment, which was just a pie chart, and then said that he was the one to bring the chosen one to Eden. And yeah, the chosen one is the student we've been seeing the whole time. The instructor passes along his driving manual before taking the Obi-Wan Kenobi way out, but before the student leaves, the Flesh Rider calls out to him. It's basically the same type of interaction, except the Flesh Rider says that the kid has to make his own future and choose freedom to become one of them. In the end, though, he chooses neither, and he and the Flesh Volkswagen decide to set out on the road, almost immediately getting robbed of their car by a hitchhiker and subsequently dying in the desert. Overall, Ethereal Snake seems to have a very good understanding of 20th century warfare, with a huge amount of his work focused around Vietnam and World War II. But in both cases, the stories are rarely about the wars themselves, and more about normal people doing bad things because of those wars. The conflict between following orders and choosing your own path is presented in pretty much every piece of media on the channel. Sadly, in most of them, the characters are dealing with the consequences of having followed orders, and the pain and trauma that ensue. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll leave a link to the Ethereal Snake channel down below, as well as links to the channels that contributed to the creation of the content shown. As I said at the start, there was a lot of stuff I was just not able to show in this video that Ethereal has made, and more projects on the way, so go and check out his channel firsthand. Like and subscribe here if you want more stuff like this, and that's all I've got for you. Bye.